Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of Breaking Chords, and this is Carl Verheyen's Intervallic Arpeggios, and I've had some requests to feature more of Carl's music. I guess I put together a three-for-all a couple years ago looking at some of his licks. Now we're going to look at some of his Intervallic Arpeggio ideas, which are really cool, very eye-opening, very inspiring, really cool stuff. And Carl's an absolute legend. His career started around 1969, but it wasn't until the mid-80s, like around 1985, he was approached by the band Supertramp and became their touring and session guitarist. He's fronted his own band, the Carl Verheyen Group. He's racked up tons of studio sessions for albums, films, television shows, commercials. I mean, you name it, Carl's done it. A great guitarist and a total legend, kind of hidden behind the scenes, but a badass player. So even if you don't know Carl Verheyen's name, I bet you've heard his guitar playing somewhere. I mean, he's racked up hundreds and hundreds of sessions, behind the scenes with various groups and artists. Like I mentioned, TV shows and movies and commercials and stuff. His music is seemingly everywhere. And it's really interesting. It's kind of a continuation of that West Coast studio, legacy. Starting with people like Tommy Tedesco, fast forwarding all the way to like Larry Carlton and Dean Parks, and then fast forward to Lukather and Michael Landau and Dan Huff, and Carl Verheyen fits right in that, studio kind of West Coast studio puzzle, I guess. But here's an image with some of the artists and films and TV shows that Carl's worked on. So the ideas I'm sharing in this episode actually came from a guitar player lesson that Carl had in the June 1990 issue. And he had an interview and a private lesson, in this issue right there. And I went back and reread the interview, reread the lesson, and kind of ran through it. And I was like, yeah, this is really cool. So I actually learned about intervallic, arpeggios and string skipping from players like Paul Gilbert, Nuno Bettencourt, and John Petrucci, kind of studying some of their music and educational material. So I didn't initially learn this from Carl, but then visiting his lesson and kind of noticing like what he likes to do with it, it's really cool. And actually his lesson in that issue went beyond some of the typical, lessons that I've seen from other players. Like it really went pretty deep and trying it over different chords and tonalities and stuff, which is really cool. So anyway, if you're an intervallic, string skipping arpeggio fan, Carl Verheyen fan, a Guitar Player magazine fan, buckle up, because this lesson's totally for you. So we're going to start this lesson the same way Carl started his intervallic guitar lesson in Guitar Player magazine. And in the text, he was talking about guitarists that only rely on scales. And typically guitarists that rely on scales are usually playing like seconds and thirds, as far as their leaps or intervallic action. And that's kind of limited, right? It doesn't really create very much harmonic interest, but string skipping and this intervallic approach does. So what Carl's talking about here, he's basically playing this first example over C major 7. And he just plays the C major, string skipped arpeggio like this. You can see right there C and E, right? Then we're string skipping and grabbing B and C on the G string. And then we're string skipping again and grabbing G and B on the high E. Right? Really interesting sound, especially over a C major 7 chord. So there it is, played over a C major 7 chord. You could also, kind of recycle this. And you could use like a different group of strings. You could start on the low E. And there's the exact same idea, right? Just play it on a different set of strings. There's your C, E, B, C, G, B, right? And you could do it again right there. The same notes. So that's it played over a C major 7 chord, right? Like this. Right. Now we could also play that. We could also play that over the relative minor, like A minor 7, right? Like this. I played the same arpeggio, and then I actually ended on that A note. I also opened up the A string right there to kind of help you hear it over that A minor 7. Like that. And you can do that up here too. Like that. So it's really cool to find an arpeggio like that, and then you're trying it over the major chord, version, and then you're also flipping it to the relative minor, which is really eye-opening, ear-opening, and it's just really inspiring too to kind of hear that same thing, kind of played in two different ways. Okay, the next example in this lesson, Carl was sharing another string-skipped intervallic idea, over that C major 7 and A minor 7, but he was doing this. And there you can see we got E, G, D, E, B, and D, and there's no C, and there's no A either. But we can definitely use this over those chords. It's going to kind of give it like the extensions, as far as the sound. We've got like a ninth and stuff hiding in there. So over C major 7, you can always add that root, that C note right there. Kind of like what we did with A minor earlier. But there we're doing it for C. And then we could actually kind of recycle this again on a different set of strings, the same thing. Like that. So there it is played over C major 7. And we could also play this once again over the relative minor, like A minor 7. And once again, we don't have an A, so you can add an A right there on the 10th fret on the B. Or you could also slide back to it, like that. But the interesting thing here is just noticing how we're, approaching something over a major tonality. And also over that minor tonality too. Now the next example in the lesson, Carl shared yet another string-skipped intervallic idea, and this one's right here. And we're still playing that over C major 7 or A minor 7. So over C major 7, it's going to sound like this. And there I was adding like that B note to kind of get that major 7th in there. Right? Now we can recycle this idea from here. Once again, we can start on the low E right there and just transfer it to a different set of strings. Right, so that's it played over C major 7. Right. Now we could do the same thing again, played over A minor 7. So it's just really eye-opening, once again, to see an arpeggio, kind of a melodic figure like that, and then you're playing it over the major, chord version, and then also the relative minor. And it kind of expands your ideas, because that sounds really cool over C major 7, but it also sounded really cool over A minor 7 too. Cool stuff. Okay, next up's a sequenced intervallic lick, and this is kind of, shifting gears ever so slightly. Now we're playing this over a D minor 7 chord, and Carl shared, one more time. It sounds like R2-D2 freaking out or something, and the first half we're doing like that. That's really unusual, going from the low E to the D with that slide from B to C. Then hopping over and grabbing that high A and then that E. And that F to that A right there. And then the C up to a D. That's so weird. Or like that. You know, what a bizarro lick. And then played over a D minor 7 chord and kind of get an idea what it sounds like. Play that over an F major 7 chord like that, and check this out. Right? So that's really, once again, really eye-opening to hear that idea. You know, played over D minor 7, and then you're also hearing it over that F major 7, right? Really cool. Okay, next up's another sequenced intervallic lick, and this one's played over a G major 7 or E minor 7 chord, and it's something like this, kind of slow. One more time. So played over like a G major 7, like that. You know, something like that. And then we could also rework that over the relative minor, you know, E minor 7. Like that. What an interesting, cool intervallic sound. And a really interesting way to set up a lick like that. It sounds like you're falling down the stairs, but you land on your feet. Okay, last but not least is yet another sequenced intervallic lick. This time we're playing it over a C minor 7 or F 7 chord. And now we're doing... One more time. So over C minor 7, let me go through that one more time, kind of slow. So after that slide, you know, that's a really weird lick, but it's so cool. But over that C minor 7 chord, played over an F7 chord, we could do right, kind of a stretch right there. It's kind of a stretch because we're ending on C instead of the root note, that F note. But you can see once again we've got this cool like ear candy intervallic idea. And then we're playing it over different chords and different tonality types just to kind of change up and serve up a different sound. That's so inspiring and eye-opening. Like, yeah, once you learn it in one place, then flip the chord to the relative major or minor and see what you can do with it from there. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Breaking Chords with this look at Carl Verheyen's Intervallic Arpeggios. And aside from the requests that came in, you know, I was actually just kind of flipping through some of my old guitar player magazines and I came upon that lesson. And it was like, oh yeah, I forgot about Carl's Intervallic guitar lesson. And I sat here and kind of played with it. And then I had the light bulb moment, like, wait, I should turn this into a lesson. Then I started looping the chords and kind of checking them out, you know, over different chord types and tonality types. And it was really cool, you know, just kind of revisit this. And this is a good example of I don't know about modern magazines. I know modern magazines are much, slimmer and there's a lot of ads and stuff. But as far as the classic, like 70s, 80s, and 90s guitar magazines, it really didn't matter who was on the cover because you never knew what was going to pop up somewhere in the pages. Lessons and transcriptions, not to mention the interviews and stuff like that. So regardless of what's on the cover, I mean, there's Julian Bream here, but this issue had like what Jeff Watson and Steve Morse, sound page, Carl Verheyen lesson, a bunch of extra lessons in the back with Rick Emmett and people like that, Paul Gilbert and stuff. But definitely classic guitar player magazines, Guitar for the Practicing Musician, Guitar One, Guitar Edge, of course, Guitar World, and some of those. Like the old ones were just packed with lessons and songs and licks and ideas and inspiration and stuff. And I love going through those old magazines and pulling something new out where it's like, oh yeah, I've never worked on this or I forgot about this. And with this lesson, I totally forgot about Verheyen's lesson. I saw it and I kind of worked on it, for myself. And I thought, wait, I'm going to turn this into a video, for my viewers out there. So hopefully you gained something from this. Please leave some feedback and comments. Subscribe to Late Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know it with more content and material. Thank you.